Everybody, and welcome to part 5. In this one, we're going to go through and add some more high details to this mech. We're going to do some fillers. Like I was going to do the caps for this in the previous video, but I was going to try to cut it short. So I'm not running everybody into the ground here with long tutorials. Alright, so with all of that said, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the weapon. I'm going to jump into face select and double tap A, just hit A again. Make sure you have everything selected. I'm going to hit W and subdivide. And it turns out this is pretty good geometry. Did not get the inside loops here, so I'm going to go ahead and knock those out as well. And yeah, I think everything looks pretty good. Could grab this one, double tap G, kind of move it out a little bit and add one more in there. Right about there. There we go. So that's pretty nice. Now, apparently over here in the bevel it's telling me I didn't enable auto smooth. No big deal. Let's come down and enable auto smooth for that. Now there's a lot you can do here. So if I go into edge select, I could start selecting edges, Control B and bevel that, and then I can extrude this along nominals, hold shift down and bring that in and add a very nice piece of detail. And I actually have this double mirrored, so let's bring this up and I'll show you what I've done. Why is it so small? Okay, so one mirror is set on the y-axis. The y-axis, and then one's on the x. And so what I'm doing is I'm just picking up the back end of this at the same time. So no matter what I do, I can add those details in. Now I do see that doesn't necessarily match where I'm at, but no big deal. Just move that back a little bit. Looks good. So from here, I'll adjust the guns as well. Those could protrude a little bit. That's fine. So from here, you can grab faces, okay, and grab in some neat little patterns like this. Maybe deselect that one. Let's see. Something like that, and then I can actually Control B and bevel that and extrude that in just a little bit. And that's going to go across the entire mesh. And that looks pretty neat, so you could do little things like that. You don't have to even use the brushes. You can go completely non-destructive on this, and it looks pretty good. The corners don't look very good. Let's see what's going on here. I've got harden on, so there it is. I don't have the miter outer set to arc. Boom, clears it all up very nicely. And that's one of those things you want to check. And once you've got, say, one mesh beveled and everything else the way you want, then you would transfer that to the other pieces of geometry within your object, like all the different pieces. And maybe it doesn't fit, so you'll have to just kind of watch that, make sure you don't have a bunch of little shading errors. And so it looks like I don't have, yeah, I could see the ridges there. Let's see, did we even shade that smooth? Nope, didn't shade it smooth, so I'll do that. I'm going to add the auto smooth. I'm going to put in a significant amount of loop cuts. That's kind of big. I don't want there to be rectangular geometry. If I can help that, I'm going to do the same down here. And I know it's a lot, but you could stand for a little extra geo there. And that gives us a lot of playroom for, proportional editing. Actually, let's grab both of these faces so they're about the same. Extrude that back a good little ways. And it looks like I've got a little bit of a fight here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to Shift D, right click drop, Shift right click this object, Control minus, and I will boolean cut the weapon with the actual barrels that are going to go in it so we can make that look nicer. And I'll go back over here, and that's going to put a boolean at the bottom of my stack where I do not want it. I'll bring the boolean all the way to the top, and I'm just going to go ahead and apply that. And I'm going to delete the cutter, Now if we hit G just to move that off, can Control Z back. It's a very, very clean boolean. It looks pretty nice. It did come all the way out the back. It's fine though. It really doesn't matter. We could scale these down and just leave. I was just sitting there thinking about it for a second. You can actually just scale these down and leave it. Yeah, and that is the mirror actually doing that. I don't know, we'll play around with that later. We can always fill that, and it does not have to be there. No big deal. And some of the geo here is a little crookedish, but I know that's not the official term. It's not necessarily quad, so that's fine. I don't think these little tiny triangles are really going to hurt us too much. So now we can get back to business over here. I'm going to grab these faces, and I want to inset them with a thickness that, you know, like a gun barrel would actually have. And now I should be able to extrude that back a good ways. So if you happen to see inside this mesh a little bit, you don't see the back end of it, which would be ugly. And then I can drop some loop cuts in here so we don't have any ugly stretching. And then I'll drop a couple in here. And it's going to get a little bit more high poly, but that's okay. So here's the deal. We're going to do something with this to /isolator. We're going to do something with this to make it really, really nice. What I'm going to do is just go into face select, hit A for all. Let's see, how do I want to do this? All right, so I want to select just the outside. Probably quite a few ways to do this, but I will just select around the origin point here and here and grab all of those faces and hit Control+. And it's a pretty quick method. And it looks like it's not going to let me really grab all of them, so I'll just do a couple of them manually. And Shift D. Looks good. Right click, drop it. Hit P for selection. I use Q for the quick favorites. Separate that. Let's jump back out. A for all. Let's / and bring all that back, and then just select the outer piece here. And let's go / with that. Now I want to take up the top view and just go ahead and bring this in. And I think you'll like this. We're going to make this a gun barrel. And let's bring the origin. Let's bring the cursor to the selected so it's centralized as much as possible. Now I want to bring in a cylinder. I'm going to scale it down pretty far. Something like that. Kind of like that. So I'm trying to keep it perfectly on the axis. It doesn't have to be in any specific spot. It just needs to be on the axis point so it's nice and centered like that. I'm going to shade it smooth, and then I'll go ahead and auto smooth. Now this one, definitely going to add some geo to it, but I didn't add a lot because this is going to be a pretty big boolean cut, and I'm trying not to create a ton of extra geometry. And this is optional. You do not have to do this. It's going to be a little bit of a pain if you do. And so I'll grab this piece first and foremost, and I'm going to remove the mirror. I want to put a solidify on that. Even thickness, go to normals, high quality, and then I want to shift left mouse that out just a touch. Does not have to be very thick. And then I want to definitely apply that, so that is now going to be real geometry. Okay. And we can, for the first cut, I'm just going to move this forward a little bit. Let's just go into edit mode with both of these. And I'll hit L over this one, G and Y, and kind of move it over. Scale that one down. Needs to be through the geometry for sure. So you can scale it up a little bit. Looks good. I'm going to apply any scale and rotation to this so it doesn't go wonky, and I'll do the same here. And now what we want to do is we're going to bring the front view up, and the cursor is already there, so I'll go ahead and drop in an empty. And you guessed it, we are going to throw in an array modifier here. And it kind of seems like I'm just going to have to separate these real quick. So I'll hit L over this. I'll separate that selection, and I'm just going to work on this one, and I can mirror it literally top, bottom, whatever, separate it, do a bunch of cool things. And so now I'll bring the cursor to this object, and it looks like the origin needs to come back. So I'm going to set the origin geometry. There we go. And now bring the cursor up here. And now bring the empty to the cursor. All right, now we're looking really good. Let's throw an array on this. Let's turn off relative. Go to object, drop it down, select the empty. We want it to stay in that rotation, but we do want to have this origin now set back to the 3D cursor. And so if we begin to rotate this, we very simply have our setup. Select the object, and now let's just adjust it so it looks pretty good. Let's see, I think actually if you were to go with 25 degrees and then bring the count, actually 10 is a good count. I'm going to stick with 10, and I want to come back over here, and 36 degrees. Yes, okay, so that's what I remember. It's a tutorial of itself to play around with the array modifier, but the count of 10 at exactly 36 degrees gives you a perfectly even setup. Now, in order for this to work, we're going to have to go ahead and apply that array. You can delete the empty. And now we don't want to do too much of this, but we can definitely array this now. I'll take it off of the x-axis to 0, and on the y-axis I can bring that out, and you can put it anywhere you want. I'm actually going to try to line up the geometry though, so it doesn't look real ugly. And what I want to do is line this up. So we'll put it to 3.5. 3.3. There we go. I'm just trying to line it up somewhat. There we go. That's what I want. And now I can bring the count up a little bit. That looks good. Not too much of this is even going to be seen, so you can get away with probably 3 or 4 of these. And then I'll go ahead and apply that. So that is now all real geometry. So if I shift right click this object, control minus, I am now cutting that very nice gun barrel bullion in, and that is one way to do it. And keep it very clean. You don't necessarily have to go in and clean up anything. I don't see any shading errors. Nothing looks crazy. And I'm gonna / actually let's do something here. I want to apply Okay, so here we go. Let's just hit 1. I'll grab this, Shift D, the cutter, and then G and Z. I'll move 1 down here, but I'll select this object, and then I want to make sure the origin is to the geometry on this one. And with that selected, I want to bring the 3D cursor. There we go, and then bring this selected to the cursor. Boom. So now that will be lined up perfectly, and I should be able to take this, shift right click here, and do a minus on that, and that will be really nice. And G and Y, and I can move that back and probably like hold shift because it's kind of glitchy-ish. That looks pretty darn good. And so now I would come over here and apply these. It's a little tedious process, and I'm just going to delete these cutters, and I'll grab these back. I should be able to Control J join them without creating any shading errors, but let's find out. Yep, looks really nice. I'm going to / back. Now that was never mirrored, so we're going to go ahead and mirror that, and I will mirror it to the torso, blah blah blah. And I really like that. That looks nice. And so now that's going to accentuate the gun barrel look. If you want to hit like G and Y and kind of bring this forward a little bit, now you can start playing around, because this would be a high area of detail. I can jump in here and grab one of these edges, Control B, and you notice I didn't bring, hang on a second, I got a little too much geo right here. So what I'll do is I'm going to grab this loop. It's not necessary at all. I'm going to dissolve it, and I didn't bring them up. I don't bring any loops to the edge because I plan on putting in quite a few bevels, chamfers, and so on to really try to bring this up. And notice it's really not chamfering. So if that's if that's even a word. So I'm going to apply the scale to this again. For some reason, it does not seem like it wants to work, and I'll go for my bevel, and voila, there's the bevel, and that looks pretty good. And I can do the same here, but I will add in an actual 3 or 4 segment bevel right there. So 4 is perfectly fine. It kind of gives it a harder and a softer edge, because this would be more worn inside for a gun barrel and the outside would not. And then we can put a texture on this that gives it that metallic scorched look, which is going to be excellent. And so now we can continue to add in some more details, things that are going to really catch the light. And so let's go ahead. I'm going to hit A for all, G and Z, and I'm going to bring this bad boy up above the grid a touch. Make sure to create a save point, because that's technically a milestone after you do all that. You do a raise and stuff, you do a big modification. I would consider that a milestone, especially if you've got a crashy computer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to Alt H and see what I got. I do have a plane. Alright, so I'm going to grab the plane, which is invisible at the moment in that view, and I don't want that, so I'm going to solidify it. I'll hit 1 again. And I can solidify it up or down, whatever, to match the feet. And I'm holding shift to do that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Even thickness is very important. And I'll just apply this. That looks pretty good. And then my camera view, Control Alt 0 would bring in the camera if you had it. I do need to delete that empty. That's pointless now. It's Shift A, bring in a camera, I'll put one up here somewhere, and then I'll just pick up this view, Control Alt 0, and pretty easy to maneuver a camera. You can hit G to move it around and kind of pan. You can hit Z to go up and down, and hit Z again. You're going from global to local access, and be careful at that angle you're going to go through. So what you want to do is change the aperture, bring the focal length back, probably to 40 would be pretty safe without making it look too flat. Let's drop down cameras, put this to 48, and that should bring the entire mech in, perhaps minus a very small piece. So 0 to grab the camera view again. I'll hit G, and like I said, I don't really want the feet totally in there, and I'll bring this down actually to 44, because I want part of the mech to not even be in here. And so I'll jump over into rendered view and just give it a look. So I don't see any shading issues, and I can kind of poke around at this because we already set up the HDRI, and poke around. Don't see any overlapped or duplicated geometry, which is really easy to see in rendered view. I never see anybody talk about that. That's one of those things you can do. It's an absolute 100% guarantee that you're going to see all kinds of errors in this. And then if you get into a render, and let's just say we render this, and you go to maximize this screen, and I know that's pretty dark, but let's just say it starts off, or you're looking at it rendering like this, and you've got 3,000 samples because you really like what you're doing, but down here you have a duplicate you didn't know about, and it's just going to look like trash. And so let's avoid that kind of thing and do a regular inspection of our mech. Alright, so back to detailing. This looks like garbage. Let's get in here, and like I said, we're going to go ahead and just modify a couple things. I can definitely dissolve that edge, and then grab this edge and throw on a bevel. I think the chamfer is going to look a little bit better than the bevel. and can begin to do some work like that. This one doesn't have any loop cuts for some reason, so I'll match that geometry up. That looks pretty good. And can definitely, let's see, I'm going to do something different. So I don't want to grab loops that are down here. I'll grab some of these visible ones and hit Control B, and I will extrude these along normals and bring them, actually going to kind of bring them out a little bit. So what I want to do is keep that shape language going, because it's very comfortable on the eye. So if you see that shape language, you see these type of cuts, these type of extrusions all over the place. It looks very good. So we'll leave certain areas very blank. Like this area right here, we're going to leave it blank. We'll detail the weapons, the legs, and the face area in a more highly detailed way. And so I can come in here. I should be able to put a little chamfer right here. If I get into edge select, and we'll chamfer that a little bit. And this is going to be an eye. It's going to glow. So I'll inset that a little bit. Probably right there is just fine. Add a little bit of geo. Add a couple there. Just stay consistent as you're going through all this. We could even put some point lights down in here. And just to give you an idea, we can go to the material tab and let's see, just add a new material here to the head. But we're going to add another one and assign it to the eyeball. And I will go Principal BSDF to Emission and crank that up to something like 30-ish. And if I come back out, and you can see that I hit 0 for the camera view, you can see already how that's going to start really just making the mech pop. And you can be warm and fuzzy if you want and put a nice blue light in there, or you can put an orange or red light, make them look a little bit more ominous. And yes, ominous is a word. Okay, so back to it. What we can do is pull the reference image over here, and let's kind of just scale him down. Let's get a general idea of what else we really want to add. What are we missing here? So we've got all these different layers, and you've got some overlap pieces which are pretty neat looking, and these cylindrical pieces are what I actually want to work on next. So I'll jump into edit mode here, and we can put a chamfer on both sides, make sure it's equal. I don't think this one is mirrored, and just chamfer that just about like that. We'll play with that a little bit later. That's fine. Now what I'm going to do is go into face select, and I'm going to shift alt and right click on these little loops, something like that. And I'm probably just going to, let's see, do I want to symmetrize? I can just come off one, and I'm just going to have to count it old school here. I'm counting fingers and toes. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and one off from the side. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 and 8, and that should be perfectly even on both sides. And now I will shift D to make a copy and kind of inspect it a little bit. Right click, drop it, and separate that. Come back out, grab it, isolate it. Let's do the good old-fashioned rinse and repeat, and we can put a solidify modifier on that. And I want to bring that to the outside. Wait a minute. I don't want to bevel this piece just yet. So what we'll do is we will click on even thickness, and we will do high quality, and we'll bring this to the outside. Something like that. That looks pretty nice. Go ahead and apply that. Let's shade it smooth. Let's do an auto smooth. Looks good. / back. Excuse me. And now we've got these pieces, which I kind of wanted to have all the way around, and maybe they could be scaled out just a touch. Kind of play with that a little bit later. I'm not going to have it scaled just yet. Apply the scale just in case. Yeah, we can leave that alone for now. That way it's something we can go back to. I don't want to kind of set everything in stone just yet. Now we can use a destructive manner, and we will pull the carver tool up and start putting in some clip pieces. So Control Shift X, and we can use the rectangle for this, and I will have the apply for the operation. And so I'll just grab just barely the outside piece here and stay away from those other details. Hold down Shift and left click. And that seems to be taking a very long time. Let's see, did it even cut it? Oh, it's not going to cut that because I have that secondary mirror. Shame on me. Let's grab this one, and we can actually just apply that because I can remove geometry and all that stuff if I want to. Let's try that one more time. So just to the outside, looks pretty good. Hold down Shift, left click. In some point this year it will definitely slice that. So that looks good. It gives us this neat little section right here, and so that looks like this part, the gun and everything else, could actually come off, which is very nice. That's ideal. I'm going to isolate this piece, and what we can do is we can kind of run in here and do some old school stuff here. I'll just inset it and extrude it back, inset it again, extrude it out, scale it down a touch, add a little bit of a bevel to match the outside, grab that face again, and I can inset that a little bit more, bring that in, go ahead and add a little bit of geo in here. Looks good. Maybe add one here. No, don't want to add one there actually, because I plan on doing some more chamfer right here and here, and give it that more worn look to kind of match the weapons. Keep everything nice and even. 4 segments looks good, and I can kind of come back out. Now that looks like it could actually spin, at least for the most part. Now I want to clip this. I'm going to take up the front view, and I'm going to use the carver tool for that. And I will get to the point here, guys. I'm not going to actually continuously say, there's a Shift, left click. I'm not going to continuously say everything. You know, that way you guys can get some practice in without having somebody tell you every last living little thing. All right, that looks pretty good. Should have mirrored to the other side. It looks very nice. There's a lot of work done there. I'm going to do a power save. Go ahead and hit this view. Look at it. Did quite a few things. Kind of like how that's starting to turn out. Still truckloads of detail. And what thing you don't want to do is you don't want to get in here and spend a year on this model. Have a set details like our reference image. Take a little artistic license, do what you want with it, but don't spend all day on all this. All right, so we want to work on these pens and possibly work on all of them together. So I'm actually going to hide the plane for a second, and I'm going to grab all these and shift right click my little pivot point, Alt P, and clear the parents. Actually clear the parent, keep transform, and that works a little bit better. So now I should be able to grab all these pens and hit Control J. Very nice. And look at that, you can separate all these later. I'm just kind of speeding up my workflow. I'm just going to grab these 3 faces, and I want to inset them, extrude them in, inset, extrude them out, switch to line, Control B, add a nice little bevel in there. And I'm not sure that's adding very nice, so I want to apply scale to these. Let me jump back over and try that now. Okay, that looks a heck of a lot better. And that is fine. I'll just grab these and do something. Let's see, gonna inset these, make them a little bit smaller, and just kind of disappear them on the inside. And here we go. I'm just gonna go ahead and isolate these again so it's not a pain to work with. All right, so that is gonna be it for this video. Show you a couple tricks so you can make that gun barrel and a little bit of non-destructive detail. In the next one, we will finish out just a little bit of extra detail by using some bullion brushes. We're going to put the corners on this, finish this piece up, add a little extra detail to the front in the right places that we're going to start texturing. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more. And keep it up. You're doing a good job. See you guys in the next one.